Okay.
to see how it's it's gonna be like. Good to go. Yep, and you're gonna press live. Okay. Hello Periscope and hello Dawn. It's DAWNCast. I'm trying something new this morning. I'm here with the wonderful Raymond Tang, who will introduce to you later who he is and why I've got him here at our DAWNCast podcast. But for me, I just thought, well, this morning, Raymond has got a fantastic, I suppose, being and the discussions we've had in the last few years around leadership, around inclusion, and Raymond has given a TED talk around on the topic of water and humility and harmony, and I think it's a great topic in terms of leadership, and if we can actually build those aspects in to lead or to be the best person that you can be. And the Periscope, hello out there, the Periscope world. Please tune in and leave us your thoughts and ideas about our discussion around water. And I hope that Naval is going to be listening to this as well. But anyway, good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Well, thank you for coming in on a weekend to have a conversation with us at DAWNCast. So I don't, you've been aware of what we do for the last few years,
Yes.
Raymond. You've attended our conversation. I just want people to know a bit about you first before we delve into the deepness of water and harmony.
Look, Di, I mean, no pressure at all.
No pressure at all.
I think you set me up too high a pedestal. I need to bring it all the way back down.
No, Raymond.
I'm just this normal Asian guy in the streets that you meet on a Saturday, grocery shopping.
Yeah,
And,
I know.
happens to be in IT,
It's great. It's the world where we're moving into, the whole IT world, isn't it? But tell me a bit about yourself first. Did you grow up in Australia, or were you born in Australia?
No.
Tell us.
So I was born in a city called Guangzhou, China. So southern China. And I always share a joke with people that I meet, and there's a running joke around the culture of Guangzhou versus other cities. Imagine that there's a UFO.
Oh, wow, yes.
That landed in China somewhere.
Yeah.
And depending on where the alien decides to land, their destiny or their fate will be different. If it landed in Beijing, people are very, patriotic, and they want to treasure, valuables and rare treasures. The alien might be put in a museum somewhere because this is very special, very sort of like rare. And therefore, we should put it away. We should protect it.
So your Guangzhou people are...
hang on. I'll get there. I'll get there. If it landed in Shanghai, people are very ambitious. They want to very commercial minded. They want to turn it into a business. It may be put on into a showcase for a subscription only model, and people come and see it. If it lands in Guangzhou, unfortunately, we'll be asking questions like, does it taste better fried? Does it taste better steamed? Does it taste better in a hot pot? So where I grew up, it's a city just about eating and just about food. Food. So there's a saying called "食在廣州," or when you want to eat it, you go to Guangzhou. So I grew up in that environment. So everything was about food. Everything was about family gathering and just coming together to enjoy good food. Yeah.
And so when did you come here? When did you come to Australia?
I came here when I was 11, 12, kind of having done 4 years of primary school in China, just being able to read and write, barely, able to do that, and then came to Australia with my dad. Actually, he came to work in Australia, and in fact, the first time I came to Australia, the only English word I knew was name. An apple, not the Steve Jobs apple, just apple.
Yeah.
Is the first English word they teach at the Chinese school and teach you how to spell. So when I first arrived and, had to go to a school to learn English, it was an intensive English center somewhere in central Sydney. Then they had to put me through a entrance test to see, where I'm at in terms of my language and put me in the right class. So I don't stress out. Then Gave me an exam paper, kind of go, okay, cool, do this, and all I saw was the word name.
Yeah.
But then there were two of them. There was first name and last
Last
name. I
name.
didn't know what it was. I'm
Yeah.
like, how come there's two names? It's the one name. So then I'm like, okay, maybe I figure it out. Maybe one is my surname and one's my first name. But I swapped it around. I wrote my last name first and my first name last.
It's an Asian thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have the last name first.
Yeah,
and
so I
yes.
wrote my surname first and my last name last. And then the teacher came around and said, yeah, don't worry about the rest, and we'll just put you in the beginner's class. So that was the start of my my Australian life, I guess. Yeah, and it's been here since.
Well, you came to Australia the same age as I came to Australia.
Right.
From refugee camps in Hong Kong.
Yep.
So
Very different journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my first word was candy.
Ah.
So candy was something, for some reason, I picked up that word candy because in refugee camps they had missionaries who came to give you things,
Right.
and I think the missionaries were of American language, so therefore they taught you American English.
Yep.
And all I remember was the word candy, and coming here and kind of, that's all I knew. Candy. Good morning,
Right.
candy.
Right.
And Australians said, what is candy? Because in Australia, it's lollies.
Ah, right. So back then they didn't knew the
No,
the,
that's
the,
right.
true nature of
That's right.
candy and
That's
lollies.
candy
Yeah.
and lollies. So, but like you, I also went to an intensive English language class before I went into school. So we've got similar journeys
Wow,
there.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Although
yeah.
your one is much more,
Well,
yeah,
I think
interesting than mine.
Well, I don't know. We're about to find out what was it then like after that first, I suppose, few years. How quickly did you grasp the English language, and what was your, what were you thinking at the time? Because obviously you were here with your father by yourself, settling here in a new environment. Do you remember some of them thinking, or what were you thinking back then in terms of?
Yeah, I think when I first came to the intensive English center, what I noticed is that the classes were so disorganized. Because in my Chinese primary school, the teachers are very strict. They were very scary. You wouldn't want to mess up and disrespect the teacher.
Yeah.
If you do, even if it's just a hint of rebellion,
Yep.
you get sent out, you get shamed, you get put on the spot somewhere else.
Don't you get a stick? Don't you get a
Oh, well,
stick?
I think that's probably in my parents' generation. We moved a little bit past that to psychological damage, psychological punishment, and then put you out in the open in front of the flagpole, and then let you stand there for an hour,
Yeah.
and people will shame, that's the one that caused trouble. So very, very bad type of discipline.
Yeah.
But that trained my mindset. Okay, it has to be disciplined, has to be kind of structured. And coming here, the classroom chairs were kind of randomly placed, and people can sit wherever they want. And it's a time from time to time the student can talk back to the teacher if they don't agree with something, and then have a bit of debate. Some of them even storm out on their own volition and just disappeared. I thought it was wow, this is kind of awesome, but at the same time kind of scary. Is the teacher going to do anything to us? So that was a kind of a bit of a cultural shock. But got over that very quickly. Fortunate enough to have people that were in the intensive English center that was coming from different backgrounds, and I think that was the first time I experienced subconsciously the diversity of thought. Really, they were so different but the same. They're here to learn English. They were here to learn how to live their life, how to essentially become students and join high school and study and eventually become professionals. I caught up with a few of them with just ad hoc and talking about, oh yeah, do you know that back then we barely spoke a word of English, but somehow we communicate with each other by gestures and body language and stuff like that. That was awesome. And now it's almost a bit weird that we're communicating fluently because we still remember when we were kids back then, and we're bonding almost on without much of a barrier through just meaning to say, I wanted to do this, I want to do that, and and interacting with the teachers and the students. So yeah, so that was probably the first impression that was on me. Diversity is what Australia is ultimately.
And
Yeah.
did that obviously with such a different, like there was, as you said, a cultural shock in class, in school, the way that students behave or the way that things are organized. How did that impact your being from a an Asian or a Chinese Guangzhou background going home? Did were there conflict in your behavior, your language, the way that you treated or you spoke or you kind of interacted with your parent?
No, I don't think I wouldn't use the word conflict. It's probably a heavy term. I think it's more confusion from time to time, and also a little bit of uncertainty. So everyone is still harmoniously getting on with each other, but there isn't a sense of wow, we are really 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 close, and that took time. In fact, if I recall back in when I first arrived in Australia, that's the time when I had the most diverse range of friends in that intensive English center. They were from Russia, they're from Milan, some from France, and every nationality coming together to learn English. Everyone was a little bit confused and uncertain, and everyone was kind of open to give everyone else a say. So that environment was actually quite magical. And then I think after that period, and everyone started to go into schools and eventually university and stuff like that, I find it interesting that we naturally then gravitated sort of back towards the ethnic group. And now I consciously go, yeah, I wanted to connect to other nationalities and, open myself up to learn more about that. Whereas back then it was almost natural, it was organic. Everyone was sharing their stories from their countries. So yeah, that was my experience. I wouldn't call it conflict. It's more just, a sense of uncertainty and confusion. And I think the way I dealt with that was essentially, consciously saying, yep, let's opening up and talk about, where I came from to them and crack some jokes, for example, about the alien and the food analogy, and also kind of asking them about, okay, so what, like any cool, interesting things that you can tell me about your countries, and then just sharing those stories. And even to this day, every person I meet, I'll go, oh, like what, that's pretty awesome. Like, I've got a colleague who came from Ukraine, and he's very disciplined, and he's very got a very logical, scientific mind. So I'm very like disorganized and very all over the place, and I thought, I want to get this guy to train me to run a half marathon, and he became my coach to train me to run the half marathon. My time was still horrible, but I finished without dying, so that was my achievement of the year ticked. But that journey was awesome. It's just connecting with him on a interpersonal friendship level. If we just look at us both on the surface and also from a cultural background, you would kind of make the assumption whether it's an unconscious bias thing or just a personal assumption thing. Oh, maybe these two won't get along, but we are great friends, and in fact we connect on deeper topics than just the usual how are you, how's the weather. And we still do to this day. So I think the experience that I had in the intensive English center paved the way for you could call it the thoughts and thinking about diversity and how to actually open up and understand and learn more about others countries and cultures diversity, and I've had pretty good fun along the way so far. Yeah.
So would you say that had obviously, I would say, that experience, your exposure at that age to a range of diverse thinking and culture and people, made it easy for you then, or did it make it easy for you then to transition from school into the workforce? Do you think in terms of your interaction with people in the workplace?
That's a good question. Never really reflected too heavily on that, but there definitely would be a part in it, I think, because when we were in early age and in the school, and they and no one to get too caught up with personal ambition, personal agendas, and what they want to do at work. They just want to share. They just wanted to come together to talk stories. And in some ways, when we enter work, they're just that, but with the added element of activities and outputs and actions and action plan. If I kind of reflect on that, on how I, approach my colleagues on a day-to-day basis, I start with trying to find out more about them and find out more about their diversity, where they come from, interesting stories that they have, and like for you have, and how does that tie back to who you are? More recently, I started asking questions of people that I meet and come across, whether it's colleagues or just random acquaintances, and we sit down for coffee and I ask them, what is one thing that you enjoy doing before the age of 7? And I've been getting really, really wacky answers, and it was really interesting.
Like what? Give us some examples.
One was like enjoy, tying a paintbrush onto a fan, and just let it spin and then dirty the house. I'm like, okay, that's crazy.
I enjoy climbing trees.
Oh, right, okay. There's a few that enjoy climbing trees. Yeah, okay. Where were you climbing?
Well, obviously it was back in Vietnam.
Yep.
I'm often one of those. Well, the eldest of the family, but I remember I used to go to run, not stay at home that often, and we'll go to the next door neighbor and climb up trees. And I love, in Vietnam, there is a couple of trees that I can climb up easily. One is the guava tree.
Guava. Yeah, love guava.
Yes. I don't know if people know guava, but it's green and sometimes it's yellow or red in the inside with all the little seeds.
It's not in Australia, is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So
okay, you gotta tell me where to get them. I love guava.
You can get it in Cabramatta.
Right. Okay.
In some of the Asian markets.
Yep.
And I like climbing the what's the other tree? It's a pink fruit. I don't think it's available. Well, it's coming.
Pomegranate?
It's not pomegranate. It's I can't remember the name of it in English. I can't think of the name of it in English. But yeah, so I love climbing trees because I like picking them and eating them.
Oh, so the goal is to pick them rather than to exercise or to just escape from someone.
It's about the challenge of climbing a tree.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. The height, but now ironically I'm scared of height. I'm
but
scared.
I think that metaphor translates to something else.
You reckon?
Climbing, ambitious and climbing and constantly challenging, like you do every single day. So that to me resonate. I mean, does that relate to how you connect?
I don't know. It's just when you mention about some of the things that people like when before they were 7. I just thought of climbing trees. I love climbing trees. So I don't know the metaphor to it. But what about what are some of the others that you discovered? What were some of the others things that people like to do before they were 7?
Oh, look, really random stuff. So there would be like a risk manager, which you think logical brain, blah blah blah, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed setting little pots on fire in the neighborhood. It's like complete opposite of like what a risk manager should do. So it's like, okay, then you're trying to piece the answer to their actual behaviors, whether it's a micro behavior or something that's not as obvious as what the facade or the work persona puts out to be, and then you find really interesting insights. Oh yeah, I can see that, or I can see like why you behave in a certain way. So I find that pretty fascinating. And so it's overall a hypothesis that your formative opinions and thoughts kind of become more or less finalized by 7, and then every additional year is more or less reinforcing what worldview you've established.
What was yours?
Yeah.
What did you like doing before you were 7?
Oh, look, okay. So before this is one memory that I still can vividly recall every single detail. So Guangzhou, grandma's apartment, top of the building, so we can access the roof. Me, my cousin, who's 5 years older than me, we bought some fireworks. It's illegal now, but back then it wasn't. So bought some fireworks, wanted to light it and put on the fireworks show up on the roof just for our own entertainment. Send a few off, fantastic, look. And there was the last one, the biggest one, the rocket. Then put the rocket onto the edge, the ledge of just like standing onto the edge so that it shoots upward. Light it, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be the big finish. Went up for like 2 meters. Went back the other way, tipped all the way down to the ground floor. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And then we leaned over the edge, and then, okay, so at the bottom of the apartment, there is there's a garage of bicycles. People put their bicycle aside, and then they go back to their home. And then there is a security guard, just a uncle who sits there and then minds the bike and charge like a 50 cents for a security check-in fee. And then he was making his dinner. So he opens the table outside the garage, puts his rice pot, puts the rice in the water. He went back into the room to get meat or something, and guess where the rocket went?
In the area of the bicycle.
No, he went into his rice cooker.
Oh my god!
And it just exploded everywhere, and then there's rice all over the floor, and then the rice cooker was on the floor bouncing.
So you like putting out or setting up fireworks?
Oh look, I'm just a troublemaker. I think.
Right.
I think that's how I relate to it. To some extent, I still am today a troublemaker, and we didn't dare to look again over the edge because we hear a lot of like swearing from down below.
Yeah.
Like who did this, blah blah blah, and then we're like, oh okay, let's just leave it at that. But that day was the most memorable. I think it would be like 5.5, something like that.
Wow.
6, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. It doesn't strike me that you are a troublemaker. You're working in a
I think you need to
corporate-
spend more time with me.
you're in a corporate sector in technology space. Is that right?
Yep.
So, how did you go? What took you into the technology space? What was it that interested you?
Sure. Technology. I've always been in love with computer since I got my computer. I think my dad was very conscious that kids get addicted to computer very easily, so he agreed to buy me one, and I was really, really excited because I wanted to play video games. And then he went to a secondhand store and bought the oldest possible computer he could find for me. It's a 486. For those that work in IT will know what I'm talking about. 8 megabytes of RAM and 50 megabytes of hard drive. You can't do anything on it. You can't connect to the internet with it. So that was my first computer. I was excited for like a day, and then when I saw what it can't do, I was a bit disappointed. But since I got it, I still wanted to tinker with it. And then I started doing things like, we got limited hard disk. I wonder if I can delete all of the system files. So I started deleting system files that will essentially render the computer useless.
Right.
So then I learned how to reinstall Windows
Right.
and reinstall the system. And then through that, I learned what not to do, and also what to do to reinstall it. And then from then on, I learned about the fundamental of computing, purely because my dad made the decision to buy me the crappiest one. Had he was a little bit nicer to me and bought me like a gaming machine or something, I would probably not be in IT.
Wow, so he actually helped you.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Whether he consciously did it or was just being a bit of a cheap Asian, don't know. But it worked out well. Yeah.
And what is about computing? What about it that you really got into or really liked?
I think it's just the ability to break things apart and put it back together again. And I think it goes back before that. When I was in Guangzhou, there's no computers. Like neighborhoods, we're pretty like middle class, low class, low income kind of neighborhood. No one has computers. In fact, the only computer is probably in the beginning of the village, then that rich kid somewhere, and has to be shared with everyone, and they queue up to kind of see, oh, that's a screensaver, and they're like, wow, and they leave. So that was like the environment. So all the kids started to build their own toys, and I started just building toys with cardboards, because my grandma collect cardboards and then recycles them for like a cent per kilo of cardboards you recycle. And I thought, hey, these are interesting pieces of hard paper. And then I started cutting them up and putting into, telescope or like boomerang. I didn't even know what boomerang was back then, but I made a boomerang that actually comes back.
Wow.
I thought it was pretty cool. And then I came to Australia, that totally ripped me off. I was like, oh, hang on a second, I've originally invented it thousands of years ago. So maybe it's not, my invention. But I started building a lot of toys. So when tinkering with computers, really it's kind of took that to the next level of challenge, and tinkering computers. And I find that I'm the kind of person that what some of the personality tests describe as the arranger, the person who doesn't get anything done, but just likes to rearrange his work environments, thinking that it's going to be the most productive environment. I'm not sure if you can relate. Maybe you're more like observing you're definitely like a doer in getting things done.
Yeah.
I'm the person that go, all right, we need to get this done. How do I arrange this environment so that it's best to get that done?
Right.
And then by the time finished,
Yeah.
I still haven't done anything, but my environment probably changed 10
Changed it.
times.
Right.
And I feel quite satisfied about it.
And that you were able to arrange for it to be done.
Well, I suppose someone else have to come in and actually do the doing, but then I've
Yep.
kind of arranged it to suit the environment or the productive flow, et cetera, et cetera. So that rearrangement and experimentation of the rearrangement, configuring computers so that it can do more than what it was told to me that it can do, was probably the reason that I got hooked on like IT, computer technology, just putting things and hacking things.
So you then obviously, I mean, for a lot of people, they don't know what they want to do.
Sure.
At a young age, and they're kind of a bit lost, and they finish their high school and they go into uni because their parents tell them to do a certain subject. So for you, you obviously had a fair idea of what you wanted to do.
Not true.
Okay.
To some extent, I still don't.
Oh.
And I'm still finding that journey. But over the years, I think I've kind of accepted the fact that it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do, because the world is changing so quickly and there are so many channels to express yourself. Why choose just one? Like, for example, you just chose to experiment with Periscope today.
Right. I know.
Did you know 10 years ago that you will be doing Periscope?
No.
Yeah, no chance in hell.
Not even 12 months ago.
No,
like
yeah, no
10
one told.
years.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I think knowing exactly what you want to do is unreasonable, unrealistic, and puts a lot of stress on, particularly young people who already have a lot of stress from social media and keeping up with friends and actually, parental expectations or whatever societal expectation from to perform, popular media. So it's kind of a burden more than a support mechanism. So I think what I've come to realize a better way to look at it is if you focus not on per se the goals, but defining the journey that you want to go on, and having those journey defined as a daily minimal viable habits or actions, then it becomes a lot more fun. So for example, if say your goal is to lose 20 kilos. That is a burden.
Those who want to lose 20 kilos, listen to this.
Yeah, for me, just kind of like, the Asian gene kind of helped. I'm still, I ran a half marathon. that was not helpful. I regained all the weight that I lost there. So I also need to get into that again. So instead of framing it as to lose 10, that's my goal in a year. Now, there's a problem with that. Number one, framing any goal in a 1 year time frame chemically makes your brain think is hard. Why does it take 1 year?
Yeah.
Right? Then your brain already releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, to say, oh, well, that's actually a big goal and maybe it's harder than Ben-Hur. So then already you are suggesting to your subconscious that it's not going to work. And then the more you progress towards that goal and the more you kind of like from time to time fail because life happens, you punish yourself even more and reinforces that negative suggestion. And then you go, oh my God, I didn't meet my goal. I didn't meet my New Year resolution again.
Yeah,
I still have,
right.
I gained 20 kilos. What the
Yeah,
hell?
yeah.
So then instead of doing that, then reframing it and go, okay, I really want to enjoy the journey of healthy living, or find and learn to enjoy healthy living. It's a reframe. It doesn't have an end outcome. It's just a reframe. Then you kind of find ways of, okay, what is something I can do regularly to learn to enjoy this experience? It could be maybe I meet someone on a weekly basis to talk about healthy living. What do they do? I'm not committing to any actions on my behalf. I just want to going out there to meet people. Maybe it's going out for a 5-minute walk, very simple, and then every single day. Maybe I go do a different route every single day. In fact, recently I have an idea. You know the app Strava?
No. What is that app?
Strava is a running app that my coach,
That's because you're running. That's why you're accessing this kind of
No.
app.
So he's the premium subscriber. I'm kind of like, I don't want to pay. I just want to run. And he's like, no, you need to be on this professional network. I'm like, no, I don't want to be you. I just want to finish a marathon and not die. Different definition of success. and then you can run and it tracks where you are, so you can see a nice route on where you are. Obviously, that's good, and you can see your progress. And recently, I've been toying with the ideas. Okay, if it tracks your route, can I draw some painting on it? And then the night before, just chart out my running route to kind of go, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll draw a flower, or I'll draw like a peace sign or something like that. Then it becomes more fun.
Yeah.
And it's not adding any extra work on you. Oh, here we go again, and you go running. It's actually just kind of like, how do I learn to enjoy running? Because inherently, a year ago, I hated running. It's so boring, getting anything done. And then, during the training of marathon, I started listening to podcasts. I actually can learn as well as run. So learning running, merging side, gradually find ways to enjoy, getting back into running. And I think that's more important than saying, oh, what do I want to do? And becoming paralyzed before doing anything about it.
Do you think people can get into that mindset? I mean, I listened to your TEDx or TED talk about water, and you talked about, for a few years now, you've been kind of obviously working in a stressful corporate environment, trying to figure out, what success looks like and what you need to do and all of that. But you discovered something that really shifted your mindset, and as you talk about, reframe some of the things that we see as difficult or challenging.
Sorry.
When I listened to that, I thought to myself, I think, like you try to reframe some of the situations, those challenges that you get, in a way that can, as the example you just gave about seeing it, how do I enjoy, creating something joyful so that I can do a healthy living, rather than kind of saying I have to achieve this marathon. But do you think every individual people, everybody can do that, or we need to get to a certain stage in our lives whereby we are able to reflect on that and we're able to reframe some of those thinking and some of those, reframe our thinking?
I think everyone can do that. It's not a special privilege exclusive to the select few. Absolutely not. It's part of nature. It's part of human nature to explore, to find ways. It's a human nature to continue to move. It's not human nature to sit around in front of a TV and play video game all day. Although I do that sometimes too.
I was like, although we have it's kind of going that way. Everybody's in front of the computer or on their phone. But
yes, the technology companies are very good at designing addictive technology, and again, they are moving on that discipline. However, that's at the cost of our other normal individual who's not susceptible to their suggestions. But yeah, everyone by nature has the natural tendency to move, to explore, to express themselves. And I suppose those that are more curious to move and test their limits on what they can and can't do, testing different channels, different content, different forms, different character, they find what works for them and what doesn't work for them earlier than others. And like quoting Bruce Lee a little bit, he talks about martial arts to him is not about hurting people or getting into street fight and not trying to conquer someone physically or mentally. It's actually about completely and honestly expressing himself. He was able to do that through his channel. And to do that authentically and to do that completely, he needed to train. He needed to train his fists so that it's very precise. He's not overhitting, he's not underhitting, he's just right. To train his mind, he's not oversharing, he's not undersharing, he's just right. So that's the discipline and training bit. So everyone, if you follow the natural tendency, just like water, I suppose, it just flows. Doesn't matter where you go, you end up in the same destination, which is the ocean. And it doesn't matter whether you start as a intern writing blogs in a warehouse somewhere in a third world country, or you started in a Manhattan investment banking house. They all would lead towards something similar, which is humanity, which is human emotions and human connections. That hasn't changed as long as we lived. So therefore, more or less is about continue to move and continue to collect data points about what works for you and what doesn't, and then continue to reflect on those data points. To your point, having longer time span or having spent more years, definitely had more data. And when small data became big data, you have more data to work with and kind of go, oh yeah, we can see pattern. Whereas if you're a little child, you probably only have a few data points that go food, no food, toy, no toy,
That's true, actually.
fun, no fun, go that way.
Yeah.
So no different as an adult, and just more complex and more nuanced to kind of go, okay, pain, gain, reward, punishment, indirect reward, delayed gratification. So just more nuance in that way. But the natural tendency of curiosity, of continuous movement, continuous thinking hasn't changed. So everyone has the capacity and ability to do that.
Tell me about the discovery of the Tao Ching.
Tao Te Ching.
Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
That's Lao Tzu, isn't it?
Lao Tzu, yes,
Lao Tzu.
that's right.
Interestingly, I bought years ago. This was years ago when I was going through a similar journey that you did, and I stumbled upon Lao Tzu as well.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and so I've got a Lao Tzu book. It's probably more commercialized. Lao Tzu, whereby there's every page there's a poem in there.
They probably all are. Otherwise, we won't be able to understand it. It will be written in like traditional, ancient Chinese grammar. I'll be like, "What's this?" And it wouldn't resonate with me.
So
I'll be too dumb to understand it. Yeah,
but it's beautiful. So tell me about that discovery and how that changed you.
I mean, it was as I said in my TED talk, was by chance. And I knew about Lao Tzu, when I was a kid, because you grow up in a Chinese family. It's all about Confucius teaching rituals, Lao Tzu, way, no way, action 3 in action. So I was always there, but then never took it seriously, never really understood what it meant. It's probably that compounded with the dad's voice of lecturing didn't really suggest to me that's worth considering, even though it might be good for me. It's like anything that's good for you, you don't want to consume, and everything that's bad for you, you tend to consume in spades. The irony, right? But then over the course of the few years leading up to my mid-20s, I was going through asking questions like, what is my purpose? How do I add value? Like, how do I define success? What is success? And I'm doing so many things, but am I doing the right things? So just stressed out. And that night I was browsing in Chatswood shopping mall, then in Westview after eating with my wife, and then it's okay, I'm gonna go shopping. I'm like, okay, you go, I'll go to the bookshop. I'll see you there. Usually I don't. I just hide in the bookshop until she finishes and then come back. And then I was looking through. Normally gravitates towards a self-help session because lost Asian kid is like, okay, self-help probably would help, maybe not. See what happens. Then gravitate towards section and then look through all the Tim Ferriss's, the Tools of Titans, all the big classic Tony Robbins self-help book. And then okay, cool, read like most of them before. And then there was Tao Te Ching down the very bottom corner, just like coming out a little bit, a little reprinted text in purple. I'm like, it's like that thin. That's not nothing. It's just compared to the other, dictionary of self-help book claiming. I feel stressed looking at that. So I picked that up, and then I just flipped through the pages and got to the 8th poem, which is about water, the philosophy of water, and how water is a metaphor used by Lao Tzu to describe the what he thinks is the natural way of being. Not supreme or inferior or anything. It's just natural to be like water. And then he describes that it helps to see water as the ability to go to the lowest of places, remain humble, go to places that no one wants to go, even though it's dirty and not very clean. We tend to avoid it as human beings. Nah, that's dirty work. We don't want to do that. Water doesn't care. It goes to those places, cleans them patiently. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes years, decades, millennia, but it does it. And also it works around obstacles. If it's a rock, it just kind of flows around it. It doesn't actually get bothered and go, what's this? That's not right, you're wrong. It doesn't argue, it just kind of flows around it. If it can't flow around it, then it just waits for volume to accumulate. So I think metaphorically, now also referring to knowledge and experience and being able to have the capacity to embrace problems and conflicts. So if you can't solve it now, it's because your capacity is not there yet. So focus on building your capacity to embrace your problems. And similar to water, you just wait for the volume to eventually submerge the obstacle. So it becomes one and becomes part of the ocean. And by laying low, by being humble, due to the force of gravity, all streams will flow to you. and that's his view on leadership. We talk about leadership, or the words I think now uses like servant leadership. How do you help? How do you lead from the front? How do you help serve rather than command and control and manage? It's kind of being humble, holding your own sense of integrity, value, belief, and then everyone that resonates with you will flow to you and support you in that way. So all streams eventually flow to the ocean because it's lower than the mountains. So I thought that was just like, whoa, like boom, hit in the face, It's like a Muhammad Ali moment. You have a plan and you got punched in the face. And that was it, really. And that just like buzz, certain, brain cells in my brain for like over a year. I was trying to release it somehow. I went on a bet with a friend to write 10 articles on 10 LinkedIn. The first one was what would water do? And then one thought led to another, one article led to another. Several conversations, and then when the opportunity Ted came along, that was just the topic that I go, okay, yeah, I'll give it a go.
That was great.
Yeah.
I mean, Bruce Lee says, be water, my friend.
Well, he copied of Lao Tzu, I found
be
out.
Water,
Yeah.
But when what you're talking about is very much, I think, an Eastern philosophy, an Eastern way of being and doing things.
Yep.
Like you, I mean, most obviously Australians of Asian heritage or any Asian upbringing, you have that embedded, the Confucianism, Lao Tzu way of being that's been brought up in your in the household. But it's interesting because when I listened to the TED talk that you gave. And before I came here this morning, I actually was standing out in the garden, and I often what I do to kind of clear my mind is to look at instead of water, I look at nature.
Yep.
So I see nature as I said, look at that plant. It grows and it doesn't even struggle. And yesterday there was hailstorm, and it kind of the hail damaged it, right? And it would die. So there was no interpretations. Like there's no kind of meaning saying, oh, you've hurt me, I'm gonna die, but because the hailstorm hit it, it's gonna die. It's natural, and that I have no doubt it'll it'll regrow itself. And that's nature. And I've learned also in terms of looking at nature to say, the grass doesn't struggle, the tree will grow to its height because that's what it's allowed to do. But do you think if we apply that in a Western concept in the individualistic society that we are brought up in, it's very hard to, not hard, but it's a challenge to reconcile those two ways of being and in a society, in a Western society like Australia.
I think we already are applying some of the concepts now. If I look at disciplines like design thinking, it focuses on being in the trenches to understand what the user wants, rather than some designer in an ivory tower department somewhere thinking about what the user should want and end up not selling any product. So that's that's very much the philosophy of you being humble and actually going out to the field to appreciate what they're going through, observing what they are doing or not doing, and then taking the insights back to design product that will actually help them. One example was a lady went to look at the problem with babies dying in poor countries and wondering why. And the reason is the lack of warmth in the first several, I think, hours of birth. They just die. It's too cold. Now, those countries can't afford incubators. It's too expensive to both make and transport to that area. And many other companies have tried to design incubators or cheaper incubators to fix the problem. It still hasn't. Then she went to the field and observed what happened and understood that, incubators is not the solution. And then she came back and invented just a simple pouch of foil that you can throw away. It's like, 20 cents or something. And that saved many, many, many babies. And that had been adopted as common practice. So if I look at design thinking, it's utilizing some of these more Eastern philosophy. I wouldn't even call it Eastern. It's more just one way to look at it, instead of more the top-down approach. And if we look at problems like climate change, that requires collaboration from many sides, many countries.
And still very controversial.
Very controversial. It's difficult to see the problem like that complex problem like that solved using the traditional top-down approach, or I suppose what you deem as the more Western influenced by the Western philosophers like Socrates in Greek, looking at it from a holistic view, that kind of philosophy. It's difficult to see problems like that being solved that way. And I think as information become more and more readily available and transparent to pretty much everybody and anybody, the informational power of, I suppose, the traditional form of power structures, if I hold information, I have power, you don't have information, you don't, it's slowly disappearing. So nowadays, if a politician makes a blunder, everyone knows about it on Twitter, probably even before the politician's partner or the family, it's like, oh wow, what did I do? Whereas back then, you can still kind of craft a perfect image or some kind of a preferred image and kind of do that. It's harder to do that. So rather than focusing on the more controlled mechanism downwards, wouldn't it be better to find the authentic self in the trenches and how you actually behave in the trenches, and then let that emerge and let that run its course. Maybe you are only the grass that were getting hit by the hailstorm, and that's okay. That's you. That's who you are. Or maybe you are the tall trees that's destined for sunshine, and that's okay too. That's who you are. But we're beginning to see a lot of these concepts coming through. Maybe not overtly, but I think it's definitely coming. From my point of view, it's becoming more visible and more emergent.
That's interesting. That's true. I mean, as you were talking, thinking that's true. The design thinking is coming through, and there are organisations are now talking about inclusion and diversity in leadership. Because obviously, for us at Dawn, our main kind of focus or what drives us is actually see how we can actually shift that leadership dial. But interestingly, even that is also controversial because it comes to, do we just, talk about leadership or have somebody appointed or promoted to a leadership role because of that person's gender, race, background, whatever. At the moment, it's still so far apart. So there's a huge gap or distance between the idea of understand the user or being humble about it and understanding what the needs are of that end user and how we can then take that and then have it feel going up rather than at the tops telling us what we need to do down here. There's still a huge gap. How do you see that gap being closed? How do you see that being shifted, especially in the leadership?
It's a very good question, and I don't think anyone solved it, which is quite exciting, isn't it? Dawn might be the first.
Let's solve it.
Dawn might be the.
I don't know if I can solve it. What we can do is actually.
I think you can die. I think you can die, knowing you can. I think the inclusion diversity conversation is similar to your soil and grass conversation. We focused on looking at the different, little grasses and trying to promote the one that's the odd one out so that it looks diverse. But what we're missing the point is not harvesting the soil so any kind of grass can grow. So if we create a nurturing, open, inclusive environment, so no matter how quirky or you're weird or by the traditional sense, but unique you are and you're able to fully and honestly and completely express yourself, then we've done our job. Tick, done. We talk about the cultural diversity in isolation, in sort of to our detriment, really. Because we're focusing on how do we measure cultural diversity and promote more Asian into leadership, and to me that kind of defeats the point of diversity and inclusion. You're by design excluding other people.
That's right.
Cultural diversity as a concept is very nuanced. It's definitely not as straightforward as, say, for example, women in leadership and also more traditional form of diversity conversations. It's nuanced to the point of, well, I could look Asian, but if I grew up in Sydney and I've never left and I've been going to school, even taking another extreme, I've been adopted by Anglo parents. Do I consider as a Asian in the diversity conversation? No, not really. No. There's no the diversity of thought of Asian diversity of thought is not quite right. And then equally, if I'm a white Anglo high performing employee and I don't have any kind of cultural ethnic metric to support me in this conversation in terms of promotions or development or whatever. However, I've traveled the world. I've lived in many countries. I managed the multicultural teams. I have very strong cross-cultural competencies that actually that person should be considered as a effective cultural diverse leader.
Yeah.
So if we just look at country of birth and language spoken, that might be very limiting. There's also other elements like, countries they worked in, how long they worked there, teams that they manage, who are in those teams, what are their upbringings and experiences, and how those values and beliefs have influenced them to the person they are today. All of those kind of things are very difficult to measure objectively using any objective instruments, which is why I think that that conversation needs to continue to a point where we could somehow collect data around that in a more nuanced way. But the mother soil, making the environment more inclusive, also need to continue. So the environment is still more, it's encouraging, it's inclusive, it's allowing you to put together the processes and tools for you to express yourself fully, honestly, without any kind of fear of being judged or being like managed in a certain way. So I think those two things need to progress at the same time. Yeah.
Do you think organizations are capable of doing that, of being able to allow the individuals within the organization to be the best version of themselves and to fully express themselves? Because obviously they mitigate risk constantly in organizations. So how can that be done? How can that be achieved, do you think?
I think organization needs to be broader than just commercial organizations. And if we just focus on the commercial organization, which is the cohort of age that are productive from, let's say, early 20s all the way to retirement, you're missing the formative years of people that are still at school or even prior to school. If you wanted to really promote more diversity into, say, IT, and IT has been notoriously bad in diversity, mostly men, mostly guy, geeky, quirky, a bit weird, like me. And you want to promote a more diversity in terms of gender, in terms of race, etc. Then you can't just looking at the 20 plus to the retirement. You have to start young. You have to start talking about technology or IT is fun, it's enjoyable from when they were still kids, before the age of 7, before their worldview formed, before they formed the worldview of I should play with Barbies rather than I should play with Minecraft. Bad example, but you get what I mean, playing around, tinkering with technology. So that formative year is very important. And then they go into primary school being interested in those subjects, and then go into high school, picking certain subject that will help them play for foundation to doing a technology degree or something similar, so then they can work in a technology team and being able to grow that way. Well, if we just focus on the commercial organization and also the population there, then it's very limited, and the pipeline of diversity is not fixed. So you have to start from the root all the way, and that will take a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's going to take the whole of society, isn't it, to be able to shift all of that. I mean, you're in technology. Mm-hmm. How do you address the lack of diversity, as you've said, in terms of obviously the pipeline is not there. I mean, at least with technology, the STEM subjects are being very, I suppose, pushed so that more girls are interested. So there's no pipeline to see that shift yet in technology. How are you addressing the lack then, from your perspective at the moment?
I think as an industry, and what I see in banking, we are addressing the pipeline as well as within the organization. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work with a fantastic leader by the name of Anna Camarado. She is our champion of change from a perspective of women in STEM, encouraging young girls to take up more STEM subjects. So I'm very, very fortunate to work under her leadership and seeing her in action to promote STEM to young girls, inspire them, walk the talk. She was an engineer, when she was younger, picked against potentially the prejudices that you shouldn't do it, should do more girly subjects. And no, I want to do this. It's much more fun. So she, used her journey of value beliefs to actually inspire the next generation come through, and also supporting the internal mechanism to remove any barriers that might prevent, for example, female from getting a job in technology. We definitely see that changing as well from within the company. Again, I think more or less technology is a space that will always change every single day, and it's getting more and more frantic. And we are not just seeking diversity from one dimension, it's actually multidimensional. And when we almost define something else pops up. We're looking at, for example, instead of STEM, we're talking about STEAM. So arts is now part of the equation. Liberal arts, artistic thoughts, sociology, anthropology. How do you actually look at the human side of technology, or the ethical and moral side of technology? What that means, it's coming through. And I went to I would call it a opening lecture in Canberra last Friday. By the way, if you go to Canberra, please bring an extra layer of clothes. I didn't. That's why I'm a bit sick right now. I thought it's just as warm as Sydney.
No,
big mistake. Yeah, I should have known that. So ANU started a new institute called the 3A Institute, looking at how 3A Institute, and I'll explain what the A's are. And it's looking at how can we look at the emerging trends of artificial intelligence, machinery, algorithms, pretty much permeating through everything. And then who makes decisions around control? Who makes decisions around human social impact? Who makes decisions around whether it's good or bad for us? Because right now, seems like the powers is sort of sitting with the tech companies, and we're trusting the Googles and Apples and Amazons and Facebook to make decisions for how we use and consume technology. And from the United States, we also see that our opinions is also somewhat influenced by the tech companies' decisions. Now, is that actually
a good thing?
Is that actually a good thing? Is that a bad thing? No one have asked those questions, and it's because for the last 100 years we focused purely on the tech. We're the geeks that kind of just want to tinker with things, like including myself. And I think what they are presenting is the argument. If technology is going to be embedded into every element of our lives, we need to put the human in the conversation as well. We need to put diversity in the conversation as well, because without diversity of thought at different disciplines, you can't challenge those topics, or you don't have the capacity or the water, the volume to embrace and then discuss and have nuanced discussion about these topics. It would just probably end at killer robots will take us all, which doesn't really help.
That's right. Exactly.
It's like, okay, cool. So Genevieve Bell is the professor who worked in Intel for 30 years, and she just came back to Australia to set up this new applied science. And the 3A stands for autonomy, agency, assurance. So autonomy is like, how do you define autonomy? Is it automatic? Is it you're letting them do things for you? If you ask 10 people, there's 10 different definitions of autonomy, so no one knows how to define it. Agency, what rules actually govern those autonomous things? If you drive here without touching the wheel, what is driving you, and who is deciding those rules that should turn right, turn left? And if you die, or if there is someone in front of your car, do I choose to kill you, or do I choose to kill the person? Scary, actually. So there's those moral dilemma, agency. Then finally, assurance, what controls that government, enterprises, academia, and other groups needs to work out in terms of controlling and making sure the system works and not going completely out of shape very quickly.
I mean, it's very important in terms of, I think, in artificial intelligence. I know that Melinda Gates tweeted a few months back around the importance of having diversity, including ethnic diversity, in the artificial intelligence space, because obviously you can't just having male, often white male kind of doing the whole programming for the artificial intelligence, because then the perspective is also one perspective. So therefore it's very important to have a diversity of perspectives that are contributing to creating that artificial intelligence.
That's right.
And at this stage, I don't think we have that yet. So, it's, I think while there are lots of there are people, critics, who are challenging the whole idea around inclusion and diversity. People are just saying, look, if you're good, if you've got the skill set, and if you've got the talent for it, you'll be picked, you'll be promoted. So don't worry about diversity as long as you have the merit, right? It's sometimes I feel like, yes, okay, if you've got the talent, if you've got the skill set, but if you and a person who is of the dominant group walks into a job or put a project forward, or the likelihood of the dominant group, the person from the dominant group being selected is probably higher than you or I being of a for the one, for a better word, from a minority group.
Yeah.
So how do we, how do we deal with that? I mean,
I don't think that's the angle I look at it, actually, because if we look at the Industrial Revolution, it mechanically broken tasks down into repeatable jobs, and that whole philosophy value efficiency above all, and therefore promotions and leadership happens by merit of objective measurement. If you can deliver 5 boxes in shorter time than that other person, you're hired. And obviously there's kind of social bias around, okay, if you can speak the language and make me feel somewhat like you, then you're also hired. So there's 80% objective and 20% subjective. Now we're in a world where there's so many new forms, types of business like yours and others that are not mechanistic, and therefore the value and the output of the person, it's almost flipped. It's 80% subjective and 20% objective from a mechanistic statistical point of view. You can't measure your output and say, I suppose you can measure if you churn out 10 podcasts in 10 hours, is that a good thing? Or did that actually not add any value to your audience because it's just too much information? So because now it's kind of flipped and we're creating value much more subjectively, and we're utilizing our tools to do so, the only answer is diversity. The only answer to creating good, engaging content is diversity, because you just don't know what your audience will think. You just don't know what your customer will think. And the same customer may change their thinking tomorrow because they have the tendency to flip-flop because there are so many more stimuli than they were 100 years ago. Back then, one propaganda, one poster probably permeates through get decades. Now, Instagram posts forget on into either within seconds, and then there's what's the next thing? So, that's cool, and then the whole world kind of goes down the other trend. So, because of this speed of information and the constant changing of decisions and opinions at the speed of light, really, the only answer is diversity. The only answer is to have more diverse people in the team, the more diverse perspective to go, hang on, this group isn't considered, or that opinion is lost, and this voice is heard, and we're seeing in the data. That's why you're getting flamed, and that's why you're excluding these other people. Is that the intent? If so, let's call it out and be conscious about it, and then be open about it. If not, let's fix it. Let's work together to fix it. So building a team that can work in that environment, diversity should be up number one. And you talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence as a tool is like a reflection of human flaws. We are already flawed as human, but we can't do much damage because we are still very much individuals. But if we automate our flaws onto a cloud-based machines that can send out racist comment at the speed of light, that can do a lot of damage. Almost while we are sleeping, while the humans are sleeping, because machines don't sleep. They just continue churn out. Microsoft actually was experimenting with the chatbot, and when they fed Twitter data into the chatbot, it became racist. So when people start talking to it, it's becoming very mean and racist. And it was like, oh my God, that's why we created. So it just makes human biases and human flaws and I suppose non-diverse thinking even more apparent and more dangerous. So yeah, it's very much. I see it as, we've now flipped from the traditional mechanistic model to a more subjective model, and the only answer to that to the world we live in today is have more diversity. Yeah.
My gosh! But as I've just listening to your description of that, Microsoft chatbot, you would then think, yes, diversity is definitely or should be considered as for any business or any leadership, team. But then the danger of having too much information, too much data out there as well. It sounds like I can just see this cloud of all of this, in X-Men when Dr. Charles, when he goes into the
dome.
The dome, the cerebrum, all of
that. All the kids and,
all of the things.
It's kind of scary.
It's kind of scary. It's
peeking on a Big Brother style.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So is that the world we're in, whereby you're sitting there and there are all of this information.
Yeah.
And if you have diverse team or diverse group of diverse people or thinkers, all of this there, and how do you actually were able to extract the best information out of that in order to take the next step in your decision making process, or in going to a product, or going to the market? Really, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a silver bullet answer. I don't think there is a silver bullet answer to that one. I mean, just on that notion of being able to connect your consciousness to the web and have it spied upon by the likes of Google is quite excitingly frightening.
Excitingly frightening.
And I think Ray Kurzweil from Google Futurist, he said that by 2042, I think, we can already technically speaking, upload our consciousness to the cloud in zeros and ones and bits and bytes. We can already take our neural signals and translate it into a computing language and then store it in the cloud somewhere, so your consciousness and memory is backed up. If you need to relive climbing guava tree again, I can download it, retranslate it into visual pixels, and then play it back. That's your memory. Maybe a bit hazy, but
wow.
So scary, very scary, right? Technologically possible. That's the trend we're going towards. Now, so with that kind of backdrop, you go, right. Then how do you investigate, encourage, and unleash diversity of thought? I think there is no one person that can do that, and there's no one platform that can do that. It's more or less we see it in places like agile teams, and we see it in places like self-managing teams. The teams just have to figure it out as a consensus. If you have diverse opinions in the team and you have a goal or objective that you want to hit, then the team organizes itself to achieve that goal. There wouldn't be so much a leader that will say, that's the answer, go after it, because that, again, dates back to the production line where the leader knows the output is the box, therefore just kind of do it. Right now it's kind of like no one really know what the customer want, but then the team come together to brainstorm, to bring their own ideas. The environment is nurturing and it's encouraging, and they all throw things on there. Some of them may not work, but say it's free and also safe to do that, the brainstorming, and then taking that, the team organizes itself. What role do I play? Maybe I'm better today as a video editor, tomorrow as a planner, and the next day as an environment organizer. I usually fall into that role, making sure the teas and pots. The other day as a developer, a coder, and then they organize their team capability based on what they can do, and then they go after it. Then after a week or so of sprinting or they working, they reflect. And then they reflect again to see what worked, what didn't, and then they adjust the roles and adjust the responsibility. And we see that in IT. We see that in teams in IT. And we get it because we have adopted this practice very early on when we developed new software, the agile methodology. And it's becoming more so the case, and how do we apply the same method of getting work done and delivering output to other contexts, to other teams as well. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the challenges for organizations and corporations and businesses who at the moment have an idea of their output you know, who have a knowledge that this is, you know, they're still in that industrial, you know, a revolution era whereby, yes, we've got this product to deliver that's going to output. So
Yep.
therefore, the leadership of my organization and the team that I need is this,
Yep.
and because we've got an identified output.
Yep. I think the biggest challenge is harnessing and mobilizing the people. I'll expand on that. The mobilizing the multi-generational population within an organization. Like we look at a big organization like Westpac, or any of the big banks that's been around for a while, we literally have 3-4 generations in the workforce. And they hold different values. They have varying degrees of experiences, and they hold different posts and functions that have been defined largely 100 years ago. You know, that influence 100 years ago. A manager has, you know, and then sort of like a very pyramid structured.
Yeah.
Now, to mobilize that structured is very hard and very expensive, because every action, even if it's not explicitly stated, may need to go up and down, and then, you know, the chain of command to get an approval and minimize any sort of potential individual perceived loss of face in the Asian culture. So that is hugely inefficient, and mobilizing that structure to react to change, which is coming at us very, very quickly, and it's changing every single day, is the biggest challenge for any organization. Moreover, the fact that the more experienced, individuals within the organization, the ones that have seen the coming and going of trends and fads and organization making mistakes, they could become a little bit jaded. They're like, man, we'll just accept, you know, this another one of those.
Yeah, things,
one of those things is you'll always go back to what it was. And I think there is also the tendency for short-term thinking around, you know, if we incentivize management to only stick around for a certain period and it's a short-term view, then those that really have the knowledge and experience that sit in the middle, that's been here for 30, 40 years, never really have the empowerment to share their perspective, their diversity of thought, and then share in a way that will help the organization remember better. Because the new kids on the block, like myself, or people grass younger than me who make me feel old now, they come in, they have, you know, no idea what happened before. They will just change the one. It's fantastic. And this will organically continue to evolve the organization, and it will become a different place 50 years from now, for sure, 100%. But how do we leverage the existing knowledge, the existing wisdom that's there? You know, things are not new. They're just rebranded. Things as old as Lao Tzu, still relevant today. So every organization that's been around for a while would have individuals like that. That's very, very valuable. You know, call it old timers or whatever, but they are very, very valuable, and I get a lot of value, you know, talking to them. How do we retain and utilize the organizational memory so we don't end up in a place of organization amnesia, and then we just kind of go ahead without any sort of wisdom? And then how do we mobilize them so that they are offering wisdoms to those that are more that are more ready to shift and morph and change into whatever the future holds? It's the biggest challenge for every big enterprise.
Yep, and I think that we are at that stage now, aren't we? I think, as you've described it, is that that knowledge, that wisdom in the organization, but the agility that's moving in. How because at the moment there's that kind of tension, you know, in terms of, you know, and then people who are coming in, they say, well, hang on, there are no opportunities there because there's that system.
There's a frozen middle, right?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then then there's the drain of the talent then, because those that are coming in who's got these ideas and want to do this and that, and say, well, hang on, they're not seeing it. They're not actually seeing what we want to do.
Yeah.
If there was that conversation to bring the two together, that hopefully then will transform the organization and prepare it for the future.
Yeah, I think it's all about just sharing the perspective in a way that's constructive, productive, and also empowering. If we don't create the channels and the platform for the experienced guys to share what they've seen and what their perspectives are and how they relate to today's situation, they will over time becoming frozen and just say, yeah, I'll just do my job and I'm not going to add any more value than what I'm already adding. No one's listening. And then those that are coming through is, I'm not going to get promoted, stop here. People are still here and they're not moving on, etc., etc. They become more or less jaded and they move to other organizations. So yeah, bringing them together and also helping them to understand and almost respect each other's diversity of thought is an interesting and I think useful experiment. I don't have any data to back whether that's going to be successful or not, but I think it's a good start. At least the outlet of wisdoms is channeled, and also the outlet of enthusiasm is channeled, and together they could challenge each other's thinking and continue to learn. The newer employees can learn about the histories and the context and why things are the way they are, and then the ones with the history and the context can learn about new technologies and new ways of doing things and new ways of thinking things. So that dialogue, exactly to your point, it's extremely important. And through that dialogue, you create new micro businesses almost within a big business. And then you kind of go, okay, cool, we can do this. I can help you clear all the pathway because I've been here for 30 years and I know who to talk to. You can help me just go ahead and design all of these new cool tools, and then I'll make way for you. And then together they create something wonderful. So we need to do more of that, I think.
So let's go back to water. Your journey in an organization. I mean, what are some of the challenges that have been, we've described some of the challenges already, but personally for you, what were some of those challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think if I look back, my journey in organization is like flowing like water.
Wow.
Call me a millennial, gets bored every couple of years and have to move on a different job, but exactly that's what I did. I think, so I started in a team that's very heavily focused on hardware and in infrastructure. And we had rotations as part of, when we started as a young employee, and then moved to different teams, different aspects of technology, application development, project management, business analysis, IT governance, risk strategy. Now back in to do integration, so like an account manager type, middleman type role. So it's like flowing from one assignment to the next and sort of see where that takes me. I think that's a lot more fun individually, and if I stay in the same role for more than 4 years, I'd probably go mental. Or doing the same thing. Same role could have variety and also growth as well. But yeah, definitely learn from the millennial trait that is inside me to do that. I think that the challenge really is to figure out. To figure out the journey you want to learn to enjoy, rather than as previously discussed, what are the next goals and whatnot. Because I think that's hard to define and becoming more harder and harder to define as things start to shift. The job role becoming more elusive and self-created. More so we see startup CEO just give you a blank sheet of paper and say, just write your job description. And that's your job, and I'll pay you according to what you can provide for me. So there's a lot more freedom than ever before in creating and crafting the job that you love. So the challenge is more around that, and how do you want to create and craft the journey that you want to go on, and people that you want to go on those journeys with, and then how much fun you're going to have along the way. And yeah, so water as a philosophy definitely helped, and definitely don't stress over.
Well,
yeah.
so your advice to people is so what are some of the takeaways that they, in terms of their career, in terms of their journey, professional journey, the progress.
Yeah.
What if they, stumble up, there's a hurdle there, a perceived hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the advice that you would give to people?
Back to the
Water.
journeys. Yeah, be water, really. Did Bruce Lee said it best?
Be water, my friend.
Be water, my friend. And I can't do it in his voice. He's just so confident
Yeah.
that he's Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
He's a legend. It's just reframe your life as a journey. Reframe the next journey that you want to learn to love. Look at the people that you want to go on the journeys with, and look at them and say, yep, they would be a great travel companion, and think we'll have a lot of fun. And keep moving, keep finding data points, keep finding what works for you, what doesn't, and reflect on that often. And sooner or later, looking back, all the dots will start to connect. as Steve Jobs used to say, dots doesn't really connect looking forward, it only connects looking back. It makes a lot of sense. So don't get too caught up with big goals, societal expectations, what perfect is or what success is, because everyone have a different definition of that, and it's the primary motivation of going on a journey that is uniquely yours that will give, I think, long-lasting satisfaction. I think that's the difference between happiness and fulfillment. If you want to be happy, go buy a chocolate or go buy a pack of chips. You'll be happy.
Or some people go buy an expensive car.
Yeah, a Lamborghini or Tesla. The Tesla, Elon Musk was caught on a radio show this morning, and there was something about that. Maybe not Tesla, but yeah.
No, yeah.
So, but yeah, you can buy a lot of secondary, assets or possession that will make you happy for a very short period of time. But fulfillment is around, finding your journey and traveling your journey along the way, serving and helping others, and actually getting to meet people and connect with them. That will give that lasting sense of fulfillment. So yeah, so far I'm still on the beginning of my journey, hopefully with many more journeys to go.
You know what? I'm still on that journey, Raymond. Believe you me.
And it's good to have you as a traveler today.
Same here. I know. It's great. So it's I often say to people, you will always continue to learn. No matter what stage of your life, it's always learning. You're always open to learning. And I think you put it so beautifully. It's about, setting those milestones so that it's achievable, so that you don't have to say in 12, my New Year's resolution, you don't even achieve it.
I never do, as you know.
I stopped making New Year's resolutions as well. But look, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. It's a lot of fun.
For sharing with us. Hopefully that wasn't too frightening.
No, you make it very easy. You're such a good interviewer. No, thank you.
It was a conversation. It's not even an interview.
Yes.
But that's it from us at DAWNCast. So we've had Raymond this morning, and I'm saying goodbye to my Periscope. I don't know if you guys are there going on still, but hopefully you enjoyed that little conversation. And see you at the next DAWNCast.
See you.
Bye.
See you.
See you. Well, did you enjoy that episode of DAWNCast? Well, I hope you did. At Dawn, the difference is you. So, hit the subscribe button below and leave a comment and tell us what you would like to hear more of in the future.